Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. VS2.3, the dad update is almost upon us. The drive, automate, and detonate. Behind me I got some blocks. We have hinges now, and we have event controllers and timers, and there is a bunch more stuff in this update, so make sure you guys are watching all of the previews. Alright, make sure you guys are tuned in to Keen's livestream on Monday, July 6th at 5 p.m. UTC for the release of VS2.3. Alright, so we have the pistons and rotors that was introduced in 2.2. We now have the hinges in 2.3. All right, so here is the 0.5 meter variant, and then here is the 2.5 meter variant. All right, definitely a lot of detail as you zoom in. All right, so you've got your 0.5 meter and your 2.5 meter variant. You've got the adjustable RPM. You can go from -60 to +60. Your angular limits, so we go from 0 to 180. And one thing to note is it doesn't go from -90 to 90 like Space Engineers 1. This goes from 0 in its current position up to 180 for the opposite side there. So if you want to point it straight up, you have to go to 90 degrees. So a little bit of a change there. Again, you have your control velocity. This is if you were wanting to use it from within a cockpit to use your mouse controls. And then you've got your detach and attach top as you need it. All right, so something to note, when you place these guys down, they place with the 0 degree default. And it's very difficult to add anything onto it. So let's try to get a piston here onto the end. All right, so if I have this piston and I want to add it to the end here, I cannot. So I'm trying to add it onto there. I can add it onto the ground, obviously, but to try to get it to clip onto here doesn't really work. So to try to get multiple chains of hinges together is very difficult without it going to 90 degrees. So I kind of wish it would default at 90 degrees so you could actually build on it instead of starting out here at the 0. And then another thing to note is trying to figure out which is the positive side and the negative side. This is very symmetric. The only thing I've noticed here on the small grid one is if you look on the inside, let's take this track out here, you can notice that this guy is pointing down and that little notch is pointing up. So that kind of helps with placement. You really have to get in there to be able to see it. Obviously, if I point this one, it's going to point to the right there. Because that's where the lower notch was. So that's a little bit of a pain. I wish it had more of like an actual arrow on here. We've got rotational arrows, but it'd be nice to have a forward arrow or something in the base here to know where we're placing it. And the same goes here for the large. It's mostly symmetric. The only thing I've noticed is it's got these two little tick marks right here that are for the 0 degree. So that would be your 0 degree pointer. Otherwise, it's missing from this side. So those two little notches there are what to look for. All right, before we move on, I just want to show off what this kind of looks like as you build it. So obviously the piston on there we just looked at. When it clicks onto the top there, that looks all right. Let's get this hinge up to 90 degrees as well. You can hear the noise is a little bit different with the operation of this one. Just like Space Engineers 1, you have this little bit of overhang from the hinge. It doesn't have a flange to meet this, but you can put a little bit of blocks in there if you wanted to try to fill that in. Right, from the conveyor perspective, you get a little bit of an overhang as well. You get a little bit of a lip on the outside. And then if you want to do a hinge-to-hinge connection, this is what this looks like. It also has the overhanging lip here. I kind of wish this base was a little bit different. Because kind of like in Space Engineers 1, you can go from this large grid to have a medium head, and then you can build a medium chain out of it, and it doesn't have that overhanging flange. Over here on this welding arm, I was able to bring some blocks out and add some detail to it to go around the conveyor system, so it is manageable, but it's just something to note. And here's your conveyor transition from conveyor up to the base here. You've got a little bit of a lip there, but for the most part, it melds on really nicely. Conversely, over here with the top being melted on, you get a little bit of that yellow strip that is still visible. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the timer. I think technically this is the front side with the big green dot, at least it's that way in the UI. But we have a control panel access on this side. All right, so we get into here, we have a trigger now, start, pause, reset, restart, our delay in seconds, and then a silent mode on and off. So let's go ahead and give this guy a 5-second delay, and let's add a task to it. Let's grab our 2 new hinges, All right, we'll do a reverse velocity on both of those. We'll go ahead and start this timer. There we go. Click down. You'll see it rotating around. This guy is green when it's on. Let's get back into it. Start it again. You'll see that it's blue and blinking, which means the timer is running. There you go. It activates. Now, we could set this on a loop. Let's go ahead and add the timer here to the end, and we'll just have it start itself. So that works just like Space Engineers 1, where you can just have it start itself and click around. If we go into here, we can see that the counter is running. We can actually pause it, and there's still 2.1 seconds left on the clock. Start it up again, and it resumes. So this is a really good way to have an accumulator. So you might be able to have like a sensor or something if you want to have a total of 10 minutes for something. You can start and pause and wait for that whole 10 seconds. So that's really cool. Reset just sets it back to 5 seconds. So you can go ahead and start it again at any point. We'll go ahead and hit start. You can hit restart. And it'll just start that 5-second clock all the way from the top. So this is a good like dead man switch if you wanted to keep restarting your clock. And then silent mode if you want to not hear it. Alright, so that is off. Go ahead and turn it back on. You can hear that clunk. Alright, one thing to note here is the order of operations doesn't seem to matter. I've got the 2.5 meter hinge, and then I've got it turning itself off, and then I have reversing the small hinge over there, the 0.5 meter, and then it starts itself. So if I go ahead and start this timer, it'll count down, and in theory, it would reverse the big one, and then turn itself off, but you'll see that the small one rotates as well. And then if I turn this guy back on, the timer is counting down, because it also triggered number 10 here. Before we move on to the event controller, I want to cover the rotor real quick. Alright, so the rotors have limits now. You can enable the limits, and then set your max and min angles. But something to note here, let's take the large one here, and let's rotate him around a little bit. Now, when I come up here to look at it, we are definitely not in the 0 position. Let's look for the arrow. Looks like we're at 225 degrees. Alright, so let's find that 2.5 meter rotor here, and let's turn the limits on. Watch the rotor head here. It will reset itself to 0. So then you can set the limits. So, if you want to use limits, make sure you turn that on before you start building on it. I learned that the hard way while building this welding arm right here. Is this arm wanted to snap back to 0, and it was rotated around, I think like 370 degrees or something, and so it really wanted to flip around, so watch out for that. Alright, so a little bit of a quirk there that it resets to 0, but we do have limits now, so that's exciting. Alright, here's the event controller. It is a 2x1, so it's a little bit bigger than the small grid counterpart in SE1. And then I'm pretty sure here on the side, this is the same model as the timer. Let's get a timer real quick. Yeah, it's exactly the same. Even the same numbers. Okay, well that's kind of funny. Yeah, so same hooks on the top as well, so those line up nicely. Alright, so we've got parameters, and then we've got silent mode on and off, just like the timer, so it doesn't make noise. For our parameters, we have block and battery storage. So we only have the battery on this particular grid. Let's go ahead and add that. One thing I noticed, and I'm not sure exactly how we would use this, but let's put a tank over here. If I come back in, I can actually add the hydrogen tank and the battery. So that's kind of interesting that I can do both. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to and not equal to, so those are a little bit different. So it can get to the exact amount and not equal to, so that's kind of nice. There's more options in here than we had prior. Let's go ahead and put some actions here. I made some lights here on the front. I've just got a true light and a false light. So we'll set the true light on, and the false light goes off, and then it's opposite for the false side. True light would be off. And then here's something I've noticed when you put in an action, it changes you back to the true here, so I have to go back and select false to be able to drag the right one over here. So just kind of a quirk right now, just to something to keep track of. Make sure you're in the right menu. Alright, we got several parameters. We've got our block, battery, and storage percentage. Build progress, that's really nice. Block connected. Alright, so the block connected here works for piston hinges and rotors. If there is no head in here, it's false. Alright, let's spawn the top here onto the small hinge. There we go. It's back, and our green light is on. Cool. All right, next up we have the block crafting item and the block crafting item blocked. It's kind of a tongue twister there, but let's go the block crafting item first. Let's select our smelter. All right, let's make 100 steel plate. It's not producing anything right now. That is false. Okay, so let's put some iron here in the smelter. There we go. It's starting to produce. It's green. And now that it's not producing, it's back to red. So that tells you if the smelter is actually on or not. All right, the next one here is actually really cool. It is the block crafting item blocked. Right now, it is showing that it's false, that it's not blocked, because we have no recipes in here. If I put a steel plate in here, let's make 100 of them. You'll see that this guy went green, and you heard the noise here, that this is actually true. This guy is blocked. It's calling to produce something, but it's not producing it. So if we go ahead and put another stack in here. There we go. It's producing, so now it is not blocked. Alright, so it's not blocked. That was false. Now it's blocked again. So that turned green. I know that's a little bit counterintuitive to say blocked, but the action is true, so it's green, that it is blocked. Because it's still calling for 72 plates, but we ran out of iron. So that's really handy, that you can have some type of indicator, or maybe you can start up your drills again or something to get more ore. So that's a really handy one there. But again, if we clear the queue here, that's another way to reset it, so it is no longer blocked. Alright, door opened. Let's find a door. Alright, door opened. Let's add that to our queue. Add that block. Here, we'll stand to the side here. Now, one thing to note is this guy is closed right now. The door is not open. The minute that the crack opens up, that green light turns on. So it's not waiting for the door to be fully open like it is in Space Engineers 1. So this will be really handy for airlocks to know that the door is even just slightly cracked open, that you don't have a proper seal. Alright, so for like the hangar doors, we're going to need another action that knows when the door is fully open, so then we can send stuff out of our hangar without clipping on the doors. And I don't think that we can do the not equal to change that. Let's try it. Yeah, no, the action still switches right when that crack opens on the door. We're just flip-flopping which is green and which is not. Alright, compared value, I'm not really sure what that does, to be honest with you. On or off, I don't really see a difference. Alright, block enabled. Again, that's just whether it's on or off. You can pick any number of blocks. That's pretty easy. Block is functional. That's pretty handy as well. Tell you if stuff is broken. Alright, hinge angle. Again, we could pick like the hinge here. Let's add that one. And let's say if it's greater than 90 degrees. Alright, there we go. Every time that guy passes 90 degrees, you'll see the event controller changes state. There we go, greater than 90. Now the light is on. Less than 90, we're back to red. Alright, inventory filled. This one is interesting. The battery here, let's go ahead and add it, because one thing I noticed is it has an inventory. And so I wanted to test it earlier, and turns out the batteries do in fact have an inventory, because they have the power cells. So if you take these out, we're now red. Because there is no inventory in it, or no power cells. We put our power cells back. Probably could have just taken one out. There we go, our power cells are back, our light is back to green. So there's a way to monitor your batteries for inventory filled, and obviously you can use that on your cargo blocks and reactors and smelters and other things. Alright, block last result, you've got the event controller that you can add itself. So you can add other event controllers, I guess, if it's true. Then you can do actions off of that, whether the event controller was true. Alright, so I'm really excited to see what you guys can come up with on that, to have other event controllers trigger other event controllers. I feel like that's going to be like a meta game of automation that I'm excited to see what we can do. The block movement here, forward and back. Alright, this one is really interesting to me. I think it's a cockpit that we need to have down. Yes, block movement, forward and backward. We can add that guy. All right, so that one is interesting. You got forward and backward movement, left, right, up and down, and you can select the cockpit for it. And also down here, you have your rotation, you have your pitch, roll, and yaw. You can also select your cockpit for those. All right, next up, you got our block oars detected. If we had an oar detector, that would be very handy to do actions off of it. Piston distance, again, this is just like the rotation angle. You're picking where the extension is. So we could put like a 1 meter extension. One thing I would like to see on here is values. All right, I'm pretty sure I can like program in any number here. Yeah, I've got 100 meters. That piston is not going to extend that far. So it'd be nice to have some limits on here and maybe some labels of what our units are. Would be really handy. Power supplied. If they're getting power, you can check that. Ready to align and ready to connect. Those are both for your connectors. So let's go ahead and place a connector. We talked about the rotation, pitch, roll, and yaw. We have a seat occupied. We can select the cockpit there. So let's go ahead and hop in our cockpit. There we go. Lights green, lights red. That one's pretty easy. Sensor active. This one's interesting to me. You can add a sensor. I got one here on the front. So whether it's active or not, so if we get into the sensor range, it trips the event controller. So I don't know exactly what you would use that for, because the sensor itself has its own list of actions. So maybe if you had like an AND gate, I don't know if we put multiple sensors on there. Actually, let's try that. Alright, well I guess that's actually pretty handy. You can have one action here in your event controller, and you can have multiple sensors trigger the one event. So that's handy, but it's doing an either or, because I'm just tripping this one and not that one. So how do we get an AND gate in here? Alright, well I guess I never noticed this before. There is a condition mode once you have 2 or more objects. I've just been playing with one object. So now we've got an AND gate. So that's really nice. So now we're tripping one sensor, we're not doing it. Tripping one sensor over here, we get both of them. There we go, it switches green. Okay, very cool. Well, I can definitely see a lot of use for that. Turret has target. We don't have any enemies on here, but that's really cool. We can monitor our turrets, whether they have an object locked. Oh, looks like we got 3 more here for the cockpit. We've got velocity, forward, back, left, right, and up and down. So we have movement, pitch, yaw, and roll, and our velocities. Alright, well this is interesting. We have weapon ammo in here instead of just inventory filled, because your magazine will be loaded into the gun, so it won't actually be counted as inventory, but we can still detect if the weapon actually has ammunition in it, so that's really handy. Okay, next up we have grid angular speed. This is the entire grid. There's nothing to select here, so we can just put in a number, and we can detect if this entire grid is just going to go ahead and move. Let's see, blocks added, if we get more than 1 block. Oh, that's interesting. I tried to add in a number here, and I go back and forth and it resets to 0. Huh. Okay. What happens when we add a block? Okay, it went green. And if we take away a block, it goes false. So we can just keep adding a whole bunch of blocks, it's staying true. We take away 1 block, and that goes false. Dampeners enabled, that's cool. In atmosphere and gravity. If lights are enabled. So what happens if we like hit L? Alright, so if we hit L here on the cockpit to turn our lights on and off, the lights will get triggered over there for the event controller. Okay, good to know. Oh, I didn't even pay attention. We have angular speed and linear speed, that makes sense. And then mass. Okay. Let's see, if the mass is greater than, I don't know, 10? No, that one resets as well to 0. Okay, well this might be if we add a block, it's going to add mass. If we take anything away. Right, I added ore here to the system. What happens if we take ore away? Well, we took mass away from the system, both in inventory and in blocks. And that doesn't seem to be changing it, so I might not know how to use this, or it's currently broken. I don't really know what is the case there. Alright, well, I'm sure I got deep into the weeds there on the event controller. There is a ton of stuff coming in this update. Make sure you guys are watching all the previews. We've got wheels and LCDs and sensors and all sorts of stuff. So make sure you're checking everything out. Alright, please tune in to Keen's live stream at 5 p.m. UTC on July 6th. Alright, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.